Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to talk about when things go wrong. You're in the middle of a page and it isn't going the way you want it to go, or you end up with a hot mess. What do you do? I'm going to talk you through that. So, I started doing grid journaling and I love the process. I just recently did this one. I love the 4 grid style. It's just enough to um, practice on, but I wanted to make it more permanent. So it's easier for me to do more grid journalings with this 4 grid. So I just basically am making myself a template. I measured the size of it, cut out some things out of some cardstock, and then traced it onto an actual art journal page. So here I'm just taking a metal ruler and using a sharp X-Acto knife, I'm just cutting out the windows. So I have a template that I can use as a tracer to more easily set up my grid journaling. So you could do this with any size, any number of grids. If you want a 6 grid, you can make one similar. It's just going to save time moving on, especially if it's something that you are going to do more of. Take a little time now and set yourself up for success down the road. So emphasize using an X-Acto blade. Buy new blades. Keep them sharp. It just makes life so much easier. So there is my template. And now all I need to do, because I use the actual art journal page, is line up the art journal page. And then I'm going to initially, I just trace in order to trace and stabilize it because, it's pretty thin in there. I'm just going to tape this down on the 4 corners. So what I would do is once I have the template, I'm going to trace several pages in my art journal and have them ready. So if I decide to do grid journaling, I have them ready. So here I'm just tracing with a black pen. Now, normally I would probably just use pencil here. I'm using black pen so that you can see it, but I would use pencil, or you could use a Stabilo all pencil, which would kind of, when it gets activated, smudge a little bit, and that might be an effect that you like. Now, the center part, because it's very thin, it wobbles a little when I'm tracing like this. Now, I just use mixed media paper here. If you use more manila tag or a heavier weight paper, it may not do that. So I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to do it slightly different. Oops, forgot to do this all together. So I'm just lining it up, taping it down. Now, instead of just using the pen, I'm going to use the straight edge of my ruler. And this way, nothing's moving, it's not wobbling, and I can actually do it faster. So this is the way I would prefer doing it. But again, depends what kind of perfectionist you are, how much the wobbly lines bother you or don't bother you. But you can see having that template really speeds up the process. The next time I want to do a grid, I can just pull out the template and trace several all at once. So there we have a couple. Now I am going to tape around the outer edge. That's just going to keep that area clean. I am a messy crafter. I admit it. I can get paint anywhere. So for whatever reason, I saw something in this light aqua color. So I'm mixing a couple paints with my white gesso and getting this light aqua. I'm going to put this as a base color. So instead of starting with a white background, I'm going to start with this aqua color. I'm not worried at this stage whether I get it all perfect. In fact, I really don't want it. I want maybe some of the grids to be a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, have some variation. I could have probably have built more of that in at this stage, although admittedly, this page goes south and it really doesn't matter what I'm doing at this stage. Now I could have, if I had thinner tape, and I would put it down the middle line, and that would have kept that middle section clean as well. But I'm going to show you some ways of working with that to keep the gunk from getting into on those lines and keeping your grid more clean. So now I have my background done. And this is just acrylic paint mixed with gesso. And here's the inspiration for the colors of my go. This is my garden. This is one of the hydrangeas. This is another one. And I love the pinks and the blues of that. So I grabbed some gel prints that I had. These are on deli paper. These are on copy paper. And I'm just pulling like ones out, getting a variety. Admittedly, I'm not going to use all of these collage papers, but pull out some and then go with the flow. Now, there is no rhyme or reason to how I'm ripping these out. You could just go with regular shapes. You could punch circles, which is what I did in the last grid journal. I like more the ripped, the organic look than the straight edges of doing a rectangles. But I think maybe next time I'll just do rectangles and I'll practice collaging with them. So I'm just ripping some of this lovely gel print paper. And my goal here with grid journaling is to do something different in each section. And I'm just following the instinct. I have no set idea of what I want to do. I'm just going with it and responding. If I like it, I'm going to go with it. If I don't like it, I'm going to change it up. So there was a lot of playing here. Love this stenciling that was on deli paper. And of course, when you glue that down, the deli paper goes translucent. Spoiler alert, because this page goes south. This, which I love right now, you won't see any of it, but it does inform a decision that I make later. So even though some of these initial layers will not be seen in the final product, they do shape the decisions, the color scheme, the shapes that you use, maybe the techniques that you're going to use. Everything data in, and it is informing those decisions down the road. You'll see what I mean. So I'm just putting pieces here and there and then switching it up. You're just rehearsing or additioning the pieces. When you like them, you leave them. I find if you force yourself to move quicker here, you are less likely to overthink the situation. Just do it. And that's what I like grid journaling for, because we're working on small pieces which are less cumbersome. Now, before I glue them down, I thought, I want some text on there. I think this is numbers. It's a reflection stamp from Tim Holtz. Now, here I'm putting that masking tape there to get that clean edge and prevent me from stamping on that center grid line. Of course, that goes south and I end up having to cover up a mess because I'm not moving it. I have the partial idea here, but execution isn't the best. I come up with another way of basically keeping those grid lines more pristine. Right now, I just wanted some interest in that background. I had pulled this stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. It reminded me of that deli paper. And now I'm just layering this up, gluing it down with my fluid matte medium. This is just initial layers. At this point, I don't have any idea of a focal image. If I'm going to do a focal image, I'm going to play with these colors, and shapes and play with different composition. That's the purpose of the grid journaling. Not necessarily to end up with a art journal page, although I do tend to take it and finish them up. So when you gel print or when you stencil onto deli paper or tissue paper, it goes clear and then you see that color behind, which is why I colorized the background. try something, move it around, and no. So here I'm just taping off the center, grabbing this and some Prussian blue and adding more squares. Now this is totally negating the squares that were on that deli paper that I loved. And I put so much of this on right now that I really lost the page. It's too dark. It's too much. It's just not good. It got very dark, so I thought, okay, I'm going to do some smooshing with white acrylic paint here. And maybe that will knock back some of this and I can keep moving on. No, this did not save the page. It didn't help. It kind of muddled the page in my mind. But when things are going wrong, just keep going. It's paper and paint. What's the worst thing that can happen? I throw this in the garbage. And I've still had some fun playing in my studio. So now I grab some black paint, put it on this dot stamp because I've learned that dots make everything work. And I'm stamping this up. And yes, it got even more muddled. More layers here wasn't helping me out. Here I decided to grab a piece of paper and I'm putting that on the edge instead of the tape. And it's a little easier to manipulate and put in and keep that grid, the grid lines clean. But now I have 4 sections that I do not like. So I grab my gesso and I'm covering up a lot of what I don't like. Basically, the stenciling I did with the Prussian blue. Most of that is going to disappear or get knocked back significantly. I didn't like it. It was making the page so muddled. I did not. I almost threw this out, but I kept going. So I'm just adding. And then I had a few more pieces of that purple gel print that I love so much. And I added a little bit of that stronger color to it. That again covered up some of that mistake and added some bright color to it. So right now I'm feeling a little bit better. So we went forward and then I basically undid everything that I had, or a lot of what I had. And some pages are like that. But again, you're learning as you go, and every decision that you make informs the next one. Now, this is the fluid matte medium. It goes on kind of cloudy, but it does dry clear and matte. Here, I'm just adding more gesso. I kind of like the fact that I've knocked it back. I'm liking it better. Then I'm getting some of that aqua color and putting that back on, introducing that very light aqua to the background. And then remember that deli paper with those squares? I'm using my brush and some of that aqua teal paint and just painting those squares in. This is adding that pop of color and I'm really liking it. At this stage, it's like, okay, I think I've saved it. I'm on the home stretch here. This is working. So while we don't see that deli paper, I am doing something here. My mark making. And again, this is not something I typically do. I rarely mark make with my brush. I've seen other people doing it. I like it, but I haven't done it till today. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding that detail in and it's really helping the page, the grids come together. Then I decide, everything's better with script. So I'm just adding some script stamp I'm putting black acrylic ink on the stamp and then stamping. So here I'm just masking off the areas I don't want the stamp to go and then stamping. right on top of everything. And that's making everything that's in the background work together. It becomes more cohesive. When you have elements on top, it just kind of melds it all together. Happy with what I have. I'm now just edging each of the areas. This just frames it. I'm just using black acrylic paint and the floating acrylic shading technique that I use on every project. Then, I looked through my focal images, didn't find anything that I really liked, and I decided I'm just going to draw a doodle flower. So I draw the center. I'm using a charcoal pencil, but you could have used a Stabilo all pencil. And once I have, kind of the 5-petal flower, I'm just grabbing some white paint or white gesso here, I'm not sure which, and just painting in those sections. Some of the charcoal or the Stabilo will reactivate and it kind of self shades it a little bit. Now, this one, I didn't even pay attention to composition. I just started drawing it. I was so focused on that. But some of the other ones, I tried to strategically place them on there, paying a little more attention to the actual composition. So I do speed this up a little bit, but you're going to see me add a doodle flower to each one. And because this grid, you see all 4 of them, I'm trying to, again, make it look different on each one so that I have an idea of what it looks like in different positions. I do come back and I add more white paint to make it more opaque. Using the charcoal pencil or the Stabilo, when you draw it, if it goes awry and you don't like it, you can take a baby wipe it off, and none the wiser. Because everything underneath this is permanent, right? I've just used acrylic paint. Everything is solid. Once that's dry, I grab this, I think it Posies in a Row from the Crafter's Workshop. I'm stenciling with black, just adding a little bit of this motif to the background. Sometimes I'm getting a little too much paint in it and have to wipe it off. Again, it's permanent behind it, so that gives me the opportunity to get rid of any mistake that I have, like I have there. This day doing this grid journaling, it seemed to fight me every step of the way. Some pages seem to create themselves. This one, well, it fought back, but I persisted. So don't give up. Just keep going. Worst case scenario, you throw it out, you've had 35 to 30, 50 minutes in the studio, and that's a win. I grab my fine line applicator bottle. This has black acrylic paint that's been thinned, and I'm just sketching around the flowers. And you can see the difference that this makes if you look at the one that I just finished with the ones that I have yet to do. Now, admittedly, my fine line applicator bottle, which I've had the paint in here for over a year, it is getting clogged, so the paint is not coming out easily. At some point in this, when I'm actually outlining the rectangles, I do take a minute and go and clean it. And I just spray Murphy's oil soap in the nozzle and clean it out, and I'm good to go. This is my Joy sentiment pack. My sentiment packs are digital and they are all available for purchase at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. So I cut out a sentiment for each one, and the word joy I glued into the center of each of my doodle flowers, and then they have the sentiment. Time for the reveal, so I'm pulling back the painter's tape around the edge. Does a great job of keeping all that paint off of there. Then I grab my fine line applicator bottle, and here's where it's barely coming out, and it keeps getting clogged, and I keep turning off the camera, turning on the camera, trying to get it unclogged, and then I did give it up and actually do a full-on clean. And since I'm not trying to make perfectly straight lines, it doesn't matter if my lines initially were a little wonky. This just makes it all work together. And then I decide to outline my sentiments as well. Since I've got the fine line applicator working perfectly, might as well run with it. As always, there are close-ups of the picture of each quadrant at the end of the video. You can let me know which one you like the best. Then I grabbed a lid from something, dipped it in my white paint that I had there, and just added one more element to it. And I really love how this worked. It brightened up the page and just, again, made everything work. So you never know where the page is going to lead you, but don't give up. I guess that's my advice. Just keep plugging through. Try something new. And when it goes awry, you really have nothing to lose at that point. Anything you do is going to improve it, or you're going to learn something, and that's a win too. I end up loving the page. I hope you do too. Until next time, go get creative.